Welcome back to Gardner Camp today. We are going to talk about wetlands. What are wetlands? Wetlands are areas that have some type of water for a little small period of time during the year. So it could be a few days, it could be a few months, it could be a seasonal time, but there is some water during a period of time of the year. Now, wetlands are usually shallow bodies of water. So they're not deep like a lake or a pond. They're just a couple inches to a couple feet deep. So really shallow water. Some of the functions of a wetland area, there's lots of different ways that it benefits both people and animals. So this is kind of like a metaphor game, but what can you tell me about this? This is a box of cereal, right? So how do you think a wetland is like a box of cereal? I'll give you a second to think. Well, wetland provides food for all types of animals. So like the cereal provides food for you and I, a wetland provides food for all different types of unique animals that live in a wetland. Let's see what else I have in this bag. Ooh, what can this be? It's actually a pillow. So how is a wetland like a pillow? Well, just like you and I sleep on a pillow, a wetland provides areas where waterfowl, ducks or geese, when they are flying south or when they're flying north, that provides a place for them to rest or to sleep. It also provides a place for small little baby animals for them to sleep and to grow in a protected area. So a wetland is kind of like a pillow, providing places for rest and sleep for animals. Let's see if I can find one more thing in here. Oh, what's this? It's a little bitty baby. So how is a wetland like a little bitty baby? Well, like I just said, little bitty babies a wetland is like a nursery for little bitty babies. So frogs, salamanders, little fish, turtles, different types of waterfowl make their nests near wetland areas. So a wetland is like a nursery for little bitty babies. In a large river like the Mississippi River, the water flows by really fast. But in these backwater wetland areas, the water's very still. So it allows these babies to grow, and it allows an area for them to be protected from those larger bodies of water. So a wetland is like a nursery. So today, we're gonna go see what we can find in a wetland. We're gonna pick up different types of creatures, different types of animals, and talk about how they can show us the water quality of a wetland. We're gonna catch different macroinvertebrates, and we'll talk about more of those later. So let's head out to the wetland and see what we can find. Hi, and welcome back to Gardner Camp today. When you think about wetlands or marshes, you might think about big animals like crocodiles, alligators, maybe big anaconda snakes. While those type of creatures do live in the southern part of the United States, they do not live here at Gardner Camp. But we do have some really cool creatures that live in our wetland down here. They're tiny little things as opposed to the larger animals that live in the south part of the United States. We are going to look for aquatic macroinvertebrates. Aquatic, meaning they live in the water. Macro, meaning they're small, but they're still visible by the human eye. And invertebrates, which means they do not have a backbone. Now, some of them might be insects, some of them might be crustaceans, and some of them might be mollusks in the snail or clam family. But all of those start out their life in the water. Aquatic macroinvertebrates are really good indicator species. And what that means is if you find a whole bunch of a certain type of aquatic macroinvertebrate, that will tell you whether or not your water quality is bad or whether or not your water quality is good. Some of these invertebrates on this poster here are really sensitive to different pollutants. Okay, now that we've got our net together, we are ready to go dip netting. We are here at Gardner Camp Wetlands, so we're gonna net up some little creatures, but you can also go dip netting in all different other types of bodies of water. So if you have a pond, you can walk along the bank and scoop things up on the bank of a pond. If you have a creek, you can go into the creek and scoop up some things in the creek. You'll find all different types of organisms in those different types of habitats. So let me dip up a few things. My technique is not very fancy by any means, but this water is really shallow out here, just a few inches. So I'm going to dip down, look for some vegetation, and try not to get into too much of the mud. So let's see what we've caught here in this net. I try to look for anything that's moving, and I've got a really cool little guy in here. Oops, he's gonna jump off. Really cool little guy in here. He's got red eyes. He's got a white back. Not sure what it is, but he's cool to look at and look up close. Put him back in the basket. What else can we find in here? We've got some of this. This is coontail. Looks just like the aquatic plastic plants you can put in your fish tank, but it's not slimy at all, so it's easy to pick through. So I just look for anything that is crawling around. Under vegetation, they like to hide. Looks like I have a few water boatmen in there. And you just never know what you're going to catch. So I'm going to put this vegetation back into the water. Over here. Clean out my net. And I'm gonna dip again, and every single time you might find something cool, so keep dipping. Let's see what I can find in here. Looks like a whole bunch more water boatmen. Sometimes you can find some really cool dragonfly larvae. Those are fun to find. Oh, here's a little fly larva that I'll show you right there. He's got a tail, and those tails, we'll show you a little bit more about these guys, but this guy will grow up as some type of a fly of some sort, but they start their life in the water. The tail actually on these things is their gills. It is how they breathe. So we'll put him back in the net and put him back in the water. I think that's about it in this net. Oh, here's something. Sometimes you have to be really patient with what you find. This is a different type of larva. You can kind of see his eyes, and you can see his tail. I'm not even for sure what this is either, but again, probably some type of fly. Could even be a damselfly larva, but he's a different color. He's light green. So we'll put him back in the net so he can go back in the water. And now we're going to show you a tray full of different things that we've found all day today, dip netting. And I'm going to return these guys back to the water. All right, here's a collection of different things that we have collected from our dip netting adventures. So we've got representatives of the mollusk family over here. These guys are part of the insect family because we can see that they have 3 pairs of legs. Over here, these are not macroinvertebrates, they're actually fish. They're little minnows, but they are very common when you're dip netting. And then we also have a worm, or we also have a leech, which is part of the worm family. So let me show you a few of these really cool ones. So this guy here is a dragonfly nymph. He has 6 pairs of legs. He gets larger and larger, and then one day crawls up onto a cattail or some kind of piece of aquatic vegetation and flies off. His wings dry off and he flies off. So this is how dragonflies start their life in the water. So these are pretty fun to find. This beetle here that's about trying to escape, I think it might be a giant water bug. I'm not exactly sure. But you can also see that he has 3 pairs of legs, and he can dive. He also likes to jump from cup to cup, what we've found. So he's pretty cool and very active and big, so you can see him really easily. And here I've got a couple little bitty creatures. They're not really swimming around too much right at the moment, but they're like the fly larvae that we saw earlier. They have gills that come out of their tail. Actually, tails are gills. That's how they breathe underwater. So they'll grow up and become a fly of some sort. These over here are little side swimmers, scuds. They're swimming around sideways. They're pretty cool little creatures. Fun to watch because they're really active. Our beetle just escaped. We've got 3 different types of mollusks. So this little guy here is a type of snail. And he's got a different shape of a shell on him. And he's moving around, if you can see him sliding around. I'll show you the other type of shell from these snails over here. So you can see that their shell kind of curls around. It's a different shape than the other snail. Last, we have a clam, which is kind of neat. It's a little fingernail. Looks like a little fingernail. So they start really little like this. We've also got a leech here, which has a really weird pattern. He's camouflaged, and he was actually attached to one of our snails when we pulled him out of the water. Last but certainly not least, we have this big guy in the middle. Now we don't know what he is. He's really big, but we found him in the water. And he's got pinchers on him in the front. He's got several segments, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, maybe 10, 11 segments on him. The last couple of segments on his tail look like they have fibers on him. And he's brownish in color and has 6 legs. So I don't know what he grows up to be, but he's a really interesting find. So that's kind of a cool collection of different things that we found out here in the wetland. It's fun to separate them into these little cups and see what all that you have. Thank you for joining us today. We caught all kinds of cool and interesting critters right here in our wetland at Gardner Camp. Hopefully you can go dip netting on your own and catch some cool critters yourself. Now, today I want you to go online and figure out what your challenge is, and hopefully you can get outside.